Money in media is an interesting thing. Like food or chairs, it's almost ubiquitous in human society and can gain many meanings in its context or use. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is an interesting series to observe with this in mind, as money tends to gain different meanings during the many parts, which are kind of overlooked, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. With this I'm implying I'll be covering all parts, and even some bits of part 8, which at the time that I'm writing this is not yet over. And if I also make mistakes or forget something, feel free to let me know. I'll be happy to be wrong. So in part 1, money is used as a metaphor for inheritance of spirit. But as many elements of part 1, it also has another side, as it is the thing that moves Dario Brando, Dio and Speedwagon at the beginning. In part 2, the inheritance theme of money becomes stronger. Right at the beginning, we are introduced to the Speedwagon Foundation, which will be present for most parts and will now be basically a source of infinite money, which makes it easier to write different scenarios around the world and also explain the nice clothes. Joseph's characters is, in a way, connected to the theme of inheritance. At first, he's a guest of wealthy people throughout his life. Then, with knowledge that he learned from the streets, by other people, and from hardships they pass through, he manages to grow as a person. In part 3, money takes kind of a step back, and Stardust Crusaders is mostly a sort of travelogue where the group visits various locations in the world with basically infinite money at their disposal. In many senses, the Stardust Crusaders are tourists and interact in different ways with different concepts, like haggling, bartering, pickpocketing and other stuff. Various enemies in the part are shown to be moved by sheer economic interest to then also offer money when cornered, which is contrasted by the characters like Endul, Enya or Darby, who work for Dio for more complex reasons. The aforementioned infinite money also plays out in their accommodations, travels and lifestyles. When offered wishes by judgment, Polnareff's initial wishes revolve around career, love and of course money. But as before is used in comparison with more complex desires as uniting with his lost ones. In part 4 we see that Josuke's family is financially stable. With the arrival of Jotaro and the Joestar fortune, the economic situation assumes a metaphorical element, as the news of Josuke's lineage is announced inheritance, and the events following start to represent things that shake up Josuke's quiet life, and how in a roundabout way his life could be enriched by it. Many characters are shown in the daily jobs, as the focus is less on superheroes like Jotaro and the Stardust Crusaders in favor of everyday people. This also reflects on the main antagonist of the part, Yoshikage Kira, who reveres this quiet life to an unhealthy extent, arriving to killing for it. His economic position during the part counterparts Josuke's, as he begins with quite a remunerative office job, an inherited mansion, etc., to then move to Kawajiri Kosaku's precarious economic situation, which also symbolizes his crisis, while Josuke's personal growth is accompanied by economic wealth, somehow. But the thing is that it also brings out a darker side from people, having, for example, Tamami and Okuyasu's father driven and punished for the greed, while Josuke learns to have control over it. In part 5, money is primarily stolen and or used as a tool used by the characters. It's a symbol of trust, which is given to the organization to move up in the ranks. The money given from the organization also symbolizes the trust that it gives back to its members, and it's the catalyst for the assassination team's rebellion, as they felt that the trust they got wasn't on par with the risk they went through for the organization. On my video on the reasons why the part could be called Golden Wind specifically, I go into much more detail over the symbolism of gold in the part. In part 6, money is present right from the beginning of the part, as it is used to showcase the corruption of Green Dolphin Street Prison, where you can bribe almost everybody and buy stuff. The abuse of privilege of wealthy Americans is also shown through characters like Romeo Giso, who bribes Jolene's lawyer to make sure she receives the blame for his murder, and even in the main antagonist of the part, Enrico Pucci, which, believing that he was acting for the greater good, used every tool at his disposal to further his own plans, including the large wealth of his family. In part 7, the Steel Ball Run race and its prize money are one of the main focuses of the narrative, as it motivates many characters from all around the world. This money here could be easily seen as a metaphor for the American dream, a promise of wealth and opportunity for everyone, which is used by the main antagonist of the part to further his own plans. Like the gold rush, the race attracts people who seek a way to be able to build themselves up from scratch and the like. There's also the thing that the race, and even the money, mean different things for some of the characters, be it redemption, recognition, their own justice, their own self, their own people. Anyway, during a part, Johnny and Gyro get in a sort of test of greed with Sugar Mountain, which could be seen as a sort of gambling analogy. In part 8, which at the time of the writing of this video is not yet over, money has a relevant role once more. The Higashikata Fruit Company, in this case, acts as a sort of correspondent of the Speedwagon Foundation and its infinite money. The protagonist of the part, Josuke, is kind of adopted by the Higashikata family, and their dynamic reminds of sitcoms of the 90s and 80s like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Even the house gives that feeling. In any case, the Higashikata family is extremely well off, and it kind of reflects on how they act, even having as an example Norisuke Higashikata IV basically bribing his own son to have him lay off. One of the main conflicts in the part also happens because of the rivalries of fruit-selling companies and other wanting to claim the monopoly of this cool new fruit. The Shakedown Alley and Milagro Men arcs also kind of reflects on the Tamami and Shigechi encounters, and all seem to connect to Joshua's character arc. Finally, going into the side content, there are quite a few stories involving Rohan Kishibe having to do with money issues, with him buying a mountain, the Gucci bag that transforms money into Gucci merchandise, or even a story about him overhearing a confession of a man that didn't want to help a poor person. Anyway, this was my video on Money and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I just wanted to introduce the concept of money in JoJo and make people notice it, and I hope you liked it, and yeah, goodbye.